promise you a life of prizes, plunder, and adventure.
In this video, I'm going to show you how to raid in Politics and War. Raiding is the fastest method to earn money as a new player. When you attack other nations, you get a small percent of their nation's cash and resources as loot. Raiding is when you declare war just to get the loot. There are hundreds of inactive nations that produce money and resources like you do under 1000 score, and after 45 days of inactivity, they get deleted. It makes sense to raid them and put that money to use.
For amongst all the gentlemen of fortune sailing these West Indies, he ranks amongst the most clever.
Let's start by introducing you to war types and loot types. There are 3 war types: raid, ordinary, and attrition. When you declare a raid war, you get 100% of the potential loot. If you declare an ordinary war, you only get 50%, and attrition is 25%. Obviously, you'll be selecting raid war type when you're raiding. There are also 3 types of loot: ground attack loot, nation loot, and bank loot. Every time you launch a successful ground attack, you will loot a small amount of cash from the enemy nation. The amount is based on how many soldiers and tanks you have. One tank is equivalent to 22 soldiers when it comes to looting. When you win a war, you'll get 10% of that nation's cash and resources as loot, if you declared with the raid war type. The pirate war policy increases all forms of loot by 40%, therefore increasing nation loot to 14%. Switch to the pirate war policy immediately. It is a brilliant policy. If you defeat an enemy nation in an alliance, you'll loot part of their alliance bank. Specifically, you'll loot a percentage of the bank based on the number of members in the alliance. Loot a bank with only 1 member and you'll get 33%, which is the cap. By the way, if you blockade someone, they can still make bank transactions, just not to and from their own nation. So if you try to steal an alliance bank and they are active, they will just move the bank to somewhere else. There is a bit of preparation needed to raid. Specifically, you'll need at least 800 infrastructure to buy a lot of units, so start with that. For improvements, you'll want at least 5 barracks and 1 dry dock. Soldiers and ships are the 2 most powerful and useful units for raiders. Soldiers are used in ground attacks, which will earn you loot, and ships can be used to blockade enemy nations and prevent them moving their cash and resources to other nations. Oh, and if you want to be very professional about it, it's a good idea to buy the Intelligence Agency project. It allows you to conduct a second spy operation every day. If you use your spy operations every time you hunt for targets, you'll get at least 20% more loot by avoiding unprofitable targets. You should also stay below 3 cities whilst you're raiding. Buying cities increases your score and reduces the number of nations you can attack.
And he's a canny one. Knows his way round every crag and crevice of these islands.
Onto finding targets. So the war page is pretty self-explanatory, but this is the location just in case. We're going to filter our search results: hide nations and alliances, hide nations without open war slots, hide beige nations, hide vacation mode nations, and I order by score descending, and I'm going to change my score in this video just so that way I can see the types of targets you'll find. In your case, don't change your score. Leave it as it is. This gives you a long list of targets which you can then evaluate. And evaluating is necessary since if you pick a bad target, you're potentially wasting 3 days and a lot of revenue. Evaluating a target means checking what the last person who raided this nation got when they won. You can do this by going to their war activity page, then looking for their most recent defeat in their list of wars. Click the hyperlink on the timeline and then scroll to the bottom. It's a good target if the cash looted is above 200,000 and the total value of the resources looted is above 2 million. You can calculate the value of resources by multiplying the amounts by the market prices. For example, if they looted 10,000 food and food is selling for $100, then that's $1 million. This is where the intelligence agency really comes into effect. If you find a nation that hasn't been attacked before, then visit their page and click espionage. Then gather intelligence, and very easy. This will give you the total resources on their nation. Divide the resources by 100, then multiply it by 14 to get the amount that you loot from them. The Intelligence Agency project allows you to do this twice. I was also going to explain some advanced tricks, but you won't really need them. Instead, I'm going to tell you how to pick much better targets in half the time. Find out which raiders are making the most money, and attack the same targets as they do. Even if the target gets beiged, then set a timer and attack them as soon as they exit beige. Declaring war. When you've found your targets, then declare war. If possible, then wait 3 minutes before the next turn change so you get an extra military action point. It'll speed up the war by approximately 2 hours. Aside from that, select the raid war type and complete the capture. This is also a good time to tell you you'll want at least 5 wars going on 24/7.
There's a fearsome dog that feeds off trouble and turmoil. I seen him clear the deck of a Spanish galleon like it were nothing.
Fighting the war. In raiding, your main objective is to beige the opponent, i.e. reduce their resistance to 0. This means knowing how to lower their resistance faster than yours. Different attacks do different amounts of resistance damage. Immense Triumphs remove 10 resistance in ground battles, 12 resistance in airstrikes, 14 resistance in naval battles, and when you get moderate Empiric victories, then they reduce about half that. The fastest way to win a war is by using 5 naval attacks, destroying 70 resistance, and 3 ground attacks, destroying 30 resistance. It requires 29 maps, military action points. If you attack 3 minutes before a turn change, you'll start with 7 maps out of 29, lowering it to 22. And since you gain a map every 2 hours on turn change, it'll take 44 hours from when you declare to win the war, 1.8 days. 10 ground attacks is probably the best method. This requires 30 maps, so it is 2 hours longer than the shortest method, but that's not noticeable and you make up for this in ground attack loot. You'll probably be doing this method the most, and there's a trick to save you a lot of money. Select Equip Soldiers without munitions. By doing this, you save more money. 9 airstrikes. This requires 36 maps and expends the most resources of any method. A last resort for if the opponent fights back, or you don't want to waste units destroying their tanks and ships. So 6 missiles is one of the alternative and less efficient methods of beiging an opponent. So this requires 48 maps, 8 maps per missile, destroying 18 resistance each. They are deceptively powerful, so they allow you to beige people even if they have more military than you, and sometimes they don't notice that it's happening. 4 nukes. This also requires 48 maps, 12 maps per nuke, dealing 25 damage to resistance each. Like missiles, they allow you to beige people with more military than you, but they also deal more damage, and radiation lowers the income of affected cities for the next week. Oh, and if you found this video helpful, then like, subscribe, share it. I'm sure this is going to be shared with so many alliances.